to this Young Directors Forum. My name's Ian Garner. I'm Vice Chair of the Institute of Directors for North Yorkshire. I'd like to welcome you all to this, the next in our series of IoD Young Director Forums. In a moment, I'll hand over to Bea, who is the Chair of our Young Directors Forum. And today's topic is improving your pitching skills. And our guest speaker is Paul Ellison, who is Commercial Director at Garbutt and Elliott. So to hand over to Bea. Bea, over to you.
I think we might, have we still got Bea?
Yes, I'm here. I was dropped out, sorry, but I'm back.
Okay. I was just introducing you, Bea, so over to you.
Welcome, everybody. Sorry, I don't know if you can see me. Not sure. Yay. Hi. Apologies. I'll just arrive back home at the minute. But welcome, everybody, to a Young Directors Forum. We are here for you to help with your director's aspirations, whether you're a new director in a business or whether you are in a new director or potentially within a business as an entrepreneur. Our aim is really to help you develop your skills and give you some advice where to go for help. And we want to create for you a group of like-minded individuals so you could actually chat to and ask any questions you might have about, leading a business in current times, especially. So I will hand it over to Paul, who is our speaker today, who will give us an introduction to the investment readiness program and a little bit of information about pitching your business to other business leaders or potential investors. So over to you, Paul, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Bea. Thanks, Ian and Tony. Welcome, everybody. Yeah, my name is Paul Ellison, and I work for Garbutt and Elliott. And if you don't know what we do, we are accountants based in York and Leeds. We're a firm of about 200 people, growing all of the time. And yeah, we offer the full range of services to our clients that most businesses need to either get started, to grow, or to thrive into the future. I won't bore you with all of that. I'm sure that's not why you came. Today's session is called Creating and Presenting a Compelling Investor Pitch. It's a very grand title. It makes the assumption that I'm going to talk to you about some tips and some techniques that you can use if you were pitching for some investment. And I think it works whether you're presenting to a group, if you put yourself in a situation, in a Dragon's Den type situation, which is more common than you might think, or if you're doing a one-to-one session with a potential investor. And that could be either an angel investor, or quite honestly, could even work if you were presenting to a bank and you were trying to persuade a bank to lend you some money, because obviously there are two broad different ways of getting money into your company. I'm going to try and make it a little bit interactive. So if you are all right, if you don't have to, by the way, but if you're happy to put your camera on, that would be brilliant. Nice to put faces to names, because one of the things I'm going to talk to you about today is the importance of making connections with people when you are presenting. So if you are able to switch on your camera, that would be lovely. You have to suffer looking at my face for the next 45 minutes to an hour or so I apologize for that. Right, let's get going. I'm going to cover three areas. I was asked by Bea and Tony, what will people get out of this session, which is a bloody question to ask. So here's the three that I hope to achieve. First of all, I'm going to outline some content that would be great to get into a pitch. And there's 10 boxes I'm going to talk you through in that. It's fairly straightforward, fairly obvious stuff. Second bit is, what are the key elements of making a positive impression? And I'm going to talk about making sure that you make a great impression right from the very start. And the reason why I think that's important is that if you think about what you're doing when you're trying to get somebody to invest in your business, they're investing in you, and they're investing in your company, and you've got a sales job to do. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why it's important to think about that and make a great positive impression right from the very start. And then lastly, I'm going to give some do's and don'ts and some tick box type things and some templates, that sort of stuff that you can use. 45 minutes. It says then questions, but can I encourage you all, if you have a question, please don't be afraid to butt in. Ask me the question. So if I say something that prompts a thought, please go ahead and ask. Or if I say something that prompts a disagreement, please also go ahead and ask. I'm absolutely fine with that as well. So let's get going. So I ought to say the session is a little bit of a sort of mini sales training session. It'd be much better if we were in a room, by the way. And obviously, we're having to do webinars in these torrid times. So it's sort of a little bit of sales training, a bit of presentation skills. Try and condense everything at 45 minutes is a bit of a challenge, but see what you think. Right. First of all, the thing that you ought to have in place before you think about pitching out anything to anybody is you should have a business plan. Now, I'm not going to run through those 10 boxes in terms of the content in the business plan, but it's important that you've got one, because if you've not stuff written down and if you've not structured your thinking and you've not got some great financial documents, you don't really have a baseline from which to base your presentation. And a good, experienced investors and people that work in banks will spot that straight away. So it's important to have a business plan in place. And I'm sure you all do. You've maybe got some thoughts in your head. You've maybe gone through the process and got something written down. But as I say, it's really, really important that you do that. You are going to get copies of these slides, by the way. So you can, but by all means, do use this. This is based on a template approach that we take with our clients, and these are exactly the things that we would expect to see in a good business plan. The reason box 9 is highlighted is that that's the exec summary, and obviously the exec summary is normally at the start of a business plan, and there's a fair amount of truth in it, in the fact that lots of people will only read the exec summary, and if it doesn't grab them, and if it's not good and it's not got the right elements in it, then once again you're not making a great start. And also, if you can get your exec summary right, I think it provides the basis for your actual sales pitch, and I'm going to demonstrate why that is in a second. Any questions on that? Any thoughts? Who's got a good business? Anybody got a business plan in place already? Been through the process? Christian, you're nodding. You're the only face I can see, so I'm going to have to ask you, I'm afraid. Sorry, mate. Oh, I can't hear you. Sorry, I didn't get you. I think you might be having a microphone issue, Christian. Joanne, sorry, Christian, I can't hear you, mate.
You'll be able to hear me now.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
I said I've made a target of myself by showing my face, haven't I?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes, we do have a business plan. We incorporated a new entity at the back of last year.
Right.
We built a business plan with myself and the directors.
Right.
We haven't put much of it into action.
Into practice, right?
We've only been incorporated for just under 3 months.
Right.
Yeah, we have one. We drew it up ourselves. It wasn't something we did with investors or anything too professional. It's probably the standard template, but we have one to give us a direction. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Well, you made a great start, Christian. Good on you. Joanne, you look like you want to speak.
I was just saying, I've been on both sides, the investor side and also the seller side. So the beauty parade, I'd call it, and it's very difficult because you think your business plan is fantastic. You've been through everything and you get there and somebody will pick a hole in it like one. And you like go, oh my gosh, I wish I'd practiced even more with this.
That's it. Absolutely. Practice. Yeah. I mean, I suppose what we have to remember is that investors Would you rather I made the working assumption, everybody, that we're talking about angel investors, or do we want to talk about banks? Do we just concentrate on angel investors? They see a lot of people, see a lot of businesses. They will make snap decisions, and you've got to grab them and you get it right. And you're absolutely right, Joanne. You've got to practice it. You really, really do. Excellent. Right, I'm going to keep going. So what's the exact summary? That was that box 9, and the yellow box that I shared with you there. So it tells a little bit more of a story, and I'm going to, I think telling a story is really, really important when you're making your pitch. Just tell a story of what we are and where we're trying to get to. Makes it easier to digest the plan, so you should get it in the exec summary. You shouldn't have to go through the 20 pages. You should get the key points in the exec summary. As I said, most investors will read that part. It needs to be comprehensive yet succinct. I know that sounds odd, but you've got to cover all the bases, not go into too much detail. Positive, realistic, and sell our business an idea. And as I said, it creates our sales pitch. Now, so what I will do is just run you through the key elements of the exec summary, because what that will do, as I said, is it'll just create a nice platform from which we can then go on and make a presentation. So when I show you this, it's essential content. I'm not saying that you should slavishly go from box to box when you're actually making your presentation. You've got to be a lot more nuanced than that. There may be some parts of your business idea or your business performance that's more important than others, and you've obviously got to make that decision about the key points that you want to bring out. But if I talk to you about content, there are 10 boxes. I must like 10 boxes. I'm so sorry. I try to boil things down and make it as simple as possible. So let me just go through them. We're setting the scene at the start. So we're giving a description of the company, we're giving a top line description, not going into eons of detail. We're outlining the opportunity and we're summarizing the ask and the growth potential. So, we're just setting the scene. We're talking about who we are and what we do. We're talking right from base 1 about the opportunity, and we're going to talk about how much money it is and where we think we can get to. We're then going to define the problem or the idea that our business idea or business addresses. It's all about the market need, whether that be in your local market or in your category or nationally. You've got to have identified a need, and you've got to be able to talk about that, because I think if you're not able to articulate this clearly from early on in your presentation, then they're not going to get it. And it's a really, really big and important part of your story. And successful businesses are excellent at this. They start from their customers or their consumers, and they're able to identify something that's not quite right or something that they just can't get, that ultimately, of course, your business is going to provide. So define the problem or the business your business's idea is going to address. Then you talk about your solution or your opportunity. How do we meet the need? What makes it great? What's great about what we're going to do? And also we can talk at this point about what's different about us. What makes us different from our competitors. So we've identified the need, and we're going to talk about the actual solution to that problem. And by the way, if anybody's ever been on a sales training, anybody ever done any sales training? All good selling is always about identifying the need and then coming up with a solution to the problem. And great businesses, it's just the same, isn't it? We can all think of many successful businesses that have got this really, really nailed. What's the size of the prize? So how big is the market? What potential sales and profit might we be able to achieve? So we're starting to talk about some numbers. We're able to talk, we're able to articulate our market. I was presenting, we were an investor pitch 2 months ago, a business that was going to be doing a mobile barbers, a completely unique idea, actually. Fantastic setup, unbelievably different, this thing. But he was good at being able to articulate his local market, and he was really good at being able to segment them and talk about the different types of barbers. He really, really knew his competition, which is the next box. How well do you know your target market and the key competitors within it? Because, you know, we need to be able to articulate that we're doing something different or better than the competition. How are you going to sell and market? So it's all very well being able to articulate all of this great stuff, who the customer is, what our solution is, who our competitors are, able to go and get it but through your sales and marketing effort, then an investor would be concerned about that. So you've got to be able to talk about how we're going to attract it and what's it going to cost to go there. A little bit about you. What makes you uniquely qualified to succeed? I'm going to come back to this actually, because I think this is a really important part of making and creating the right impression and getting off to a really positive start. What makes you uniquely qualified to succeed? Talk about you and your experience and your track record, why you love what you do. You might talk about some key people in your team, your management team, but what is it about you? Because remember, I know it's a cliche and everybody says it, but it's absolutely true. They're buying into you first and foremost. And you know, if you're not able to sell yourself in terms of how uniquely qualified you are, then again, it's not a great start. What's the financial model? How do we make money? We've all seen Dragon's Den, haven't we, where they'd make a great pitch and then somebody says, what margin do you make? Or how much does it cost to make it? Or how much did you make in profit last year? And often people fall apart. So make sure that you understand the key elements of how your business makes money now and how it's going to make more money into the future. Obviously, we would be keen on this because we would say as accountants we can help put this sort of information together. But talk about your sales and your sales price and your margin. I think sales price and margin are so important for businesses to be able to articulate because it's the start point. We sell at this price and it costs us this much to make it. Whether your business is a people business or whether you make things, you really ought to understand that top of the P&L dynamic, you know. And I think if you struggle to articulate that, again, an investor would see that, and it wouldn't be great. What's our request? How much do we need in return for what? If you are talking to an angel, they are going to want to know. So what's on offer? If you've been trading for 1 year and haven't done any sales yet, and suggest that for £1 million they can have 1% of your company, think again. So be credible. Don't make that classic mistake of overvaluing what you're doing. By all means, sell the value of what you believe your business is worth, but don't overdo it, which is a classic mistake, by the way. What will the money be used for? So you need 100 grand. What are you going to spend it on? And critically, what's it going to do? What's it actually going to deliver for the business? And then something about the long term. What's your vision? Where are you trying to get to? Maybe something about your exit strategy, because or you might not have an exit strategy, but certainly investors would be thinking about it. Most of them think on a 3 or a 5 year horizon.
Paul,
there are exceptions to that.
Can you hear me? Well,
yes.
Joanne had a question. She had a hand up.
Sorry, Joanne, I didn't see that.
Okay.
I'm ranting. Sorry. That's what.
I'm sorry, I'm not talking too much, but what I would say as well is it's really important about who's going to deliver what part. I might be stealing your thunder for the next slide, but
say that often, Joanne, just say it again. I just missed it. Can you just repeat it?
Who is going to deliver what part? Let's say the financial model. Quite often I've had the technical person or the MD delivering it, and I've been like this, and oh my God, what are you saying? Because you've got to have the right people and the right dynamics, and that can change from pitch to pitch as well. It's not always going to be the same, and people spieling technical details for like 2 hours, and you've got 10 minutes to explain the profit and loss.
Joanne, you are stealing a tiny bit of my thunder, but I think thank you for doing it. It's such an important point. No, it's so easy to be dull, isn't it? Because we're all, I think it's easy to make the mistake of being passionate about what we do And as you say, if we're the technical guys love talking passionately about what they do. And it's interesting, but I'm not sure it's always completely relevant to what you're trying to achieve in a pitch presentation. So yeah, I completely agree with you. I guess it comes back to what you said right at the start when you're thinking about practice, is be clear who's doing what in the presentation. Absolutely right. Dead on, spot on. I've worked, most of my career has been in sales. I worked for Nestle, and whenever I took anybody to see Tesco or Asda or whatever the hell it might be, I would go as far as to say, this is what I'm doing, and this is what you're doing, and this is what you're saying. If they ask this question, I'll answer it. You know, you really have got to, because you can shoot yourself in the foot, can't you? It's, ruin it. Anyway, okay, so talk about the exit plan. Where are we going to take the business? When might that happen? I know you're not necessarily always going to be selling. There's obviously different ways for investors to cash out. It'd be great if you could talk about the potential upside. You know, what do you think the business could be worth if it hits its financial plan in 3 or 5 years' time? Because that's where it could be interesting to the investor. Okay, how does that sound? Any thoughts, comments? Nothing, Christian? Yep. All right, let's keep going. So creating a positive impression and great start. Anybody else venture any thoughts? How do you make a positive impression and great start? Anybody any thoughts? We've got Joanne, we talked about Alex and Holly and Braze. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Stephen, anybody? Braze.
Paul, if I've got a question. Some people try to start with something funny or something impactful, like, would you like to make £1 million? Or we want to change the face of such and such. How do you feel about those sorts of big statements that people make at the beginning of an? I feel
that that the trap not to fall into is that it's somehow corny or cheesy. But actually, the essence of starting positively in terms of the opportunity is the right thought. I think you just got to do it in the right way. Yeah, you see lots where somebody will stand up and say, "How would you like to make £1 million?" And it's a little bit double glazing in its approach, or it can come across as a little bit cheesy, or it can come across as lacking credibility. So I think it's directionally the right way to go about it, but you've got to deliver it in the right way. So let me keep going.
Me again, Paul. I also think you've got to understand the cultural differences it may have with the people that you've got in front of the table, and then basically research them, know a little bit about them, because you know that's really important. Because if you say something really stupid or unplanned or culturally not the right thing, you might as well just go home.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So I mean, again, I think the core of what you're saying, know your audience, is really, really important. And as well, sometimes you've got to be flexible to your audience because it might not quite go the way you anticipated it might. So you've got to be flexible. Sometimes you've got to be flexible on your feet. Alex, nice to see you.
Yeah, no, sorry. I was just going to say what Joanne said actually, and I think it's all about building trust as kind of early on in the conversation as possible. So yeah. I just thought I'd turn my camera on. Sorry.
Oh, great! Thanks for doing that. Brilliant. Yeah, you're dead right. Building trust, definitely. Yeah, you've got to build trust and rapport. I think we've got a chat message, Ian. I don't know whether you could pick that up, and I'll keep going for the time being. So as I said earlier on, what is a positive impression? Well, there's a couple of thoughts from me. Start well, don't be dull. Don't wait. If you've got 10 minutes, or you might have half an hour, it depends on the situation. It might be a group or it might be an individual. Don't waste 10 minutes, 15 minutes droning about some technical aspect or telling them about the history of the business and the way your father started it, and all that stuff. It's all sort of interesting, and there may well be the right moment to bring it in, but it isn't necessarily the right way to start an investor pitch.
Paul, the question in the box came from Bayer, and it was a really important one. It's how do you overcome nerves? Because I know when I'm waiting to start, and then you get into the room, and you can be very nervous, you can be trembling, and all those sorts of things. What's the best way of overcoming that sort of thing?
Yeah, and we all deal with the way we react to our own nervousness is different for different people, isn't it? I think that's the first thing you've got to understand is we all get nervous. Quite honestly, I was nervous as soon as this started. So that's how it is for me. And I think it's about understanding, how does that show itself? Some people talk too much, some people might become unclear, they might lose their words, might lose their track. So it affects us all in different ways. So understand that first of all. Make sure that you feel confident about what you're presenting. If you know your stuff, you could almost script yourself. I'm not suggesting you ever read something, by the way. That would be away from what I'm saying here about creating the right impression about yourself. But you might want to be more scripted at the start to get you going. And as you're going and you start, because actually what happens, the nerves, they will tend to disappear once you get going, once you've said something that you know is right, or you know is good, or you know what you'd intended to say, and somehow the nerves start to go. One thing I've always done is I've always said to myself, well, what's the worst thing? It's funny seeing Tony's boxing thing in the background. I was a boxer as a kid, Tony, and it was the scariest thing in the world to have to get into a boxing ring and have a scrap, have a bout. But as soon as that bell goes, you've got to switch on straight away. And there's a little bit of that in presenting. As soon as that bell goes and you get up there, you've got to dig deep, and you've got to find yourself, and you've got to go. So there's lots of different ways, obviously, of dealing with nerves. I think a lot of it is about you as an individual. I'd make the assumption that you're going to be nervous. I think if you've got nerves and you are nervous about presenting, then you know that about yourself, and you've got to think about how you're going to react. You've got to think about how you're going to react in that situation. I don't know whether that answers the question or not. Who asked the question?
Yeah. Bayer says thank you.
Okay, cool.
One thing I'd say from my own experience is that you're right, don't script it, don't read it, but you really need to have decided what you want to say at the beginning and what you want to say at the end. So you might script your opening and you might script your ending.
Absolutely.
Even though you
absolutely
don't read them. Yeah.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yeah.
Paul, can I just Paul?
Yeah.
Tony, I'll just add something to that. I think if you're well prepared with what you're talking about, and you know your audience, then, and this is through my experience as well, is just be yourself and say it as it is, because at that point you cannot sell it to the audience. They're either going to like the opportunity and the investment, or they're not, or it's going to fit their criteria, or it's not. And therefore, it's just about you being yourself and authentically yourself, and believing in yourself. And it's not a sales job per se, because they'll either fit the criteria or it won't. So I think preparation and just being yourself is key for me.
Preparation is absolutely the key. And another one aspect of preparation, by the way, is part of our nervousness might be that we fear a question that they're going to ask that we may not be able to deal with. So spend some time working out what you think their objections might be, or their difficult questions might be. See if you can work out what they're going to be. And then you can work out how might you answer them. And again, that will help give you confidence that you're well prepared when you get that difficult question.
Paul, Braze has just raised his hand. I don't know if Braze can unmute and tell us.
Yeah, I was about to say, good afternoon to all. I was about to say the same. For me, the most nervous part is when to fear that they will ask me some technical question that I may not know the answer. For example, I'm in the wine business, and sometimes, in the wine, they ask you these questions that is like, what is the, I don't know, the sensation when you smell it, and it's like, sometimes these for me, at least the deep technical questions are the most that get me nervous.
Yeah, do you know what, Braze? I've not met anybody in business yet that knows everything about everything, and I think you should be. There's absolutely nothing wrong in saying, "Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to come back to you on it." Now, if you're doing that 20 times during your presentation, you've clearly got a problem. You know what I mean? But I think it actually adds a little bit of credibility when you're honest enough to say, well, I don't know the answer to that. It's a great question, but I'm going to get the answer. I'm going to come back to you. Or you might turn to your partner and say, do you know the answer to that question? And they may know it and they may not. But so I think sometimes a bit of honesty as well is a good thing. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Positive, upbeat, engaging from moment one. I think, again, actually is also a good part of overcoming your nerves. But try to be positive, upbeat. Try to make connection. Think about this it's harder if it's over Zoom, right? I mean, the whole world of presenting things has been thrown upside down by this bloody Zoom stuff, and we're all dying to get back to normality. So eyes and smile and is harder. Well, eyes are certainly harder, aren't they? But that whole humanistic thing about connecting with people with your eyes and smiling is really, really important. And so is your voice tone. I'm going to talk about voice tone in a second. Introduce yourself, thank them for attending, thank them for their time, and then get straight in. As Joanne said, let's not do a 10-minute dual, upfront discussion about the company and its history or whatever it might be. But be flexible to your audience. One of the things you've got to try and do is read what you're seeing in front of you. It's hard to do because a lot of that sort of thing comes through experience. So through the experience of doing these sorts of presentations. But you can become good at it. Try to read what's going on. Try to read the litmus test the room, or if it's a one-on-one presentation, if they give you an indicator of something that they think is really important, they'd like to know, then don't ignore it. Think about it, and you might think about slightly changing your presentation as you go through. So try and be flexible to the audience. And headline statement. I'm going to talk about headline statements in a minute because I think if you can make a really good, not cheesy headline statement to get you going, then I think that's a good thing. You've all seen these three numbers, and it's about communication and it being made up of these three components. I'm not actually sure that this is 100% correct. I've read a lot about this guy, this Albert Mehrabian. This is an analysis that was done in the 60s where he observed, actually, and he was observing how women communicated with each other. It wasn't even blokes, but nevertheless been used, and I think maybe it's misused quite a lot in lots of different presentational skills sessions. But there is a big element of truth in the fact that, if how you say something doesn't match what you're saying, then they'll spot it. So when I say be upbeat, if we are there to sell what we're up to and sell our business, and there should be an element of being able to feel that in the tone of our voice and feel that and see that in our body language. Is that all right? Is that a nice simple way of saying it? So if I stand up in front of you all and say, hi, my name is Paul, and I've got a great business idea that I'd like to share with you all today, that requires you to invest £100,000, and I'm going to share with you for the next 10 minutes. There's a mismatch, isn't there, between what I'm saying and the way that I'm saying it. I'm not saying we all should turn into raving. We should become bounce around inappropriately, and not be yourself. So don't present in a way that you would never ever be you. But just do think a little bit about your voice tone, because it says a lot about the way that about you and your idea. Is that all right? Is that nice top line? Now, power of a great headline.
Joanne put a hand up, Paul.
Joanne, sorry.
It's me again. Even though I've been around the block a little bit, Paul, I'm actually invested in some training again at the moment, which is all about, how you connect with people, how you present, do you be all hunched up or pull back in a chair, so just to try to refresh, and also maybe learn some new things about how to actually connect. And I hate to say it, but it is a bit, some people find it difficult if you're like the senior person in the room and you're the woman. And I don't want to get into the whole male female thing, but it's still there, and especially in angel investing and say in investment banks. So again, you just got to think about it. But anyway, I'm doing some training, so there's never
good for you.
Never a bad time to keep doing it and keep trying to learn.
Good for you. And give us a couple of things that you've taken out of it that it's said to you should do differently or better.
I think it is more about that confidence, doing a couple of deep breaths before you go into the room, just to try to steady those nerves, because I might seem quite an extrovert, but I'm quite an introvert really, which I think a lot of us are. I'm quite nervous. Maybe there are times when you should stand up because you can present and you project your voice better, and also just know when to shut up as well. Sorry, I'm not very good at that.
No, you're doing great. Yeah, good for you.
So always just try to improve yourself and think about it. So
there's some basic things, aren't there, that getting your voice tone right or appropriate for the audience, and connecting with eyes and smiling, and thinking about how you look and your stance. They might seem like unimportant things, but you do see people who haven't either had any coaching or haven't thought about those things, and it does make a really, really big difference in terms of the impact that you're going to make. So good on you, Joanne. Right, part of a great headline statement. So now I know you're all far too sophisticated to ever read the Sun newspaper or even the Daily Mail, dare I say. And I'm making a point here, which is that the power of a good headline, and newspapers are very good at it, aren't they? And there's just some great examples from days gone by. But the point of a headline statement is to get people interested right from moment one, and to make you want to read on, and that's what newspapers are obviously very good at. And I'm advocating that it's something we need to try and do at the start of our presentation. And Ian made the point, is it right to stand up and say, I've got £1 million opportunity? And I don't think it's exactly right to do it in that way, but I think there is something about presenting the opportunity in a particular way. So think about how you structure your headline opening statement. And if you are nervous, definitely nothing wrong in scripting this. Get this written down, because if you get this right, and you can start confidently, it'll make a hell of a difference to how you feel for the rest of the presentation. So summarize the need your business fulfills. So talk about the market, the customer, the consumer. What's the problem that you've identified? And talk really passionately about it right at the very start of what you're doing. Then talk about the opportunity. Where do you think you can get it? What is it that we can do that can crack this opportunity? Because when we bring those two things together, as I said earlier on, that's the essence of a great business. So if you can get that into your headline statement up front. And what might that mean for the investor? So what that means for you is that our business, I believe, is a really, really strong investment opportunity. And what I'm going to do for the next 10 minutes with you is show you why that might be. So it's not quite as headline as Ian put it, and it's not got to be cheesy. It's got to be well thought through. You've got to really, really practice it. But key elements of a really good headline statement creates a great impression about you, creates a fantastic impression about the business, which is why you're there, and gives you confidence then to go on with the rest of the presentation. Now, had we had more time, I would get you all to do this. Let me show you a couple of examples. I've had to pitch recently. I'm a shareholder in a business that makes. It's not a particularly sophisticated business because it makes pies. We make Yorkshire pudding pies, or pies made out of Yorkshire puddings. And I've had to present. Actually, we didn't get angel investment. We got a bank for our second round of investment, and I had to pitch to several banks actually, because we didn't get the first one, let's put it that way, but we did eventually get there. And there's my actually very much summarized version of my headline statement, which is pastry category is worth £1 billion. Do you know that? We eat £1 billion worth of pies in the UK. Isn't that amazing? So straight away, it's a big opportunity, right? It's a £1 billion category, but it's lacked innovation. You know, most pies are either short crust or flaky pastry, and then after that, innovation has really been lacking. So it's a category that's desperate for something new and different. That was the need that we were that we based the whole business plan around. At Yorkshire Pudding, we intend to change this with the world's first to create a £10 million brand, and therefore a great angel investment opportunity. Now, it wasn't quite as summarized as that. There's more to it, but you can get the elements are all in there, aren't they? Size of the prize, the opportunity, the need. Recently had attended an angel pitch for the second one, which was a business that makes plastic out of waste. So the world's crying out for solutions to the chronic problem of plastic waste. At our company, we've got a proven idea that can turn food waste into biodegradable plastic. So in the next 10 minutes, what I'm going to do is show you how my business can literally turn waste into profit, creating a great business opportunity for investors like you. Again, it's summarized a bit for the purposes of today, because there might be some numbers in there. But the elements are in there, aren't they? And it's credible too. And the last one, so I'm trying to remember what this business was now. I can't remember what that one was. We're great at what we do. Actually, we think we're the best with customers. In fact, I think that might be made. I think I might have made this one up just to give you the elements of it. So we're great at what we do. Actually, we think we're the best. Our customers love us, and they've already helped us create a £1 million business. So maybe something about the track record of the business in that headline, because that's a positive thing. We've got to £1 million worth of sales. Now we want to scale up. And by involving an investor, somebody like you, an expert like you in your area or your category, to help us get there. So think about this, because I think if you can get this right with those elements, it will make a big difference to the way the rest of the session might go. Any thoughts, comments, challenges? How am I doing for time, by the way? I've completely lost track. It's now 4:45. How long have we got?
Yeah, okay, we're here till 5:30.
5:30.
But we want to do a bit of networking as well. So
okay.
15-20 minutes, that'll be good.
Okay, cool. You've got to be prepared to talk about yourself. As I said earlier on, how are you uniquely qualified to succeed in the future? What is it about you? What's your experience and your track record? Can you demonstrate love for your business or your idea? Can you demonstrate enthusiasm and creativity? Because if you ain't got it, then who has? And you're probably not going to get an investment if you can't demonstrate love for what you're doing. Because running a business is hard work, and particularly getting startups off the ground is really hard work. What risks have you personally taken to get the business where it is today? Now that risk could be having worked for nothing for the last 2 years. It could be that you've raided your parents' bank account and invested that. It could be anything. But what have you done? What risk have you personally done? Have you quit your job to do what you're doing? Are you working 18-hour days to get this thing going? What have you personally invested? Where are you invested in that business? And obviously be able to talk about successes. Articulate some of the successes and track record that the business has already got. How do you all feel about talking about yourselves? Some people don't like doing it. Joanne, do you like talking about yourself?
No, I can talk about the business and everybody else, but when it comes to yourself, it's really hard, isn't it? And
it is, yeah.
You know, you just go really off piste, and you know, you have to think,
you're right.
They don't really want to know about that. Stop it.
Yeah, I guess what they want to know, they just want to get, they've got to get the essence of you and what you're about and why you're doing what you're doing. I think if you can get that out, somehow find a way of getting that into your presentation or into what you're saying, I think it would be helpful. Yeah. Right. Okay. Right. I'm not going to ask you to do that because I think we're probably going to run short of time. Let's see how we go. I might come back to it at the end. So, some helpful do's and don'ts. First of all, you remember the 10 boxes. That's not a structure. That's not how you should present it. That's just making sure that you've got those key elements included in your pitch somewhere. And clearly some of them are more important than others, depending on your business and your situation. But in terms of, if you think about the pitch structure, how might it flow? Start with a great headline statement, using the three key things I talked about earlier on. All right. Make sure you clearly find the problem that your business is addressing. So talk about your customers and talk about your consumers and talk about your market and talk about what's missing, or talk about what you can do differently that doesn't currently happen in the business that you're in. And then talk about your solution. It says they're benefit driven. I'm going to show you what I mean by benefit driven in a minute. So what's your solution? What is it that your business does? Be careful, because it's that in that middle box where you can burn an awful lot of time unnecessarily. So this is not an opportunity for you to go into infinite detail. It's key points, and it's the key benefits of what it is that our business does. Then reinforce them. So reinforce the key details, the key things, the USPs, the track record and the financials. Think about the really important points that you want to get over, and then summarize the key messages, the ask and the exit plan. So if you can go from that sort of basic flow, you won't be a million miles away. Now, make sure that you understand the difference between, well, you don't have to understand the difference between features and benefits. What is, anybody know, what's a feature and what's a benefit? Think about features and benefits. Think about what your business does. Who'll venture what might be the difference between a feature and a benefit? Because what I want to try and encourage you to do is to talk about what the business does, obviously, but talk about what the benefits are of what it does.
Well, a feature could be that Institute of Directors puts on lots of events with interesting speakers. And the benefit would be you have an opportunity to learn from some of the great minds, you have an opportunity to see different perspectives, and your opportunity to take things from it. Yeah,
absolutely. So it's the difference between what it is and what it does to how it impacts on the customer, you know, what they get out of it, or how it might impact on the investor, actually. Yeah, so what it is, how it benefits the customer. You think about an obvious, actually looking at some people on here, you've probably never ever seen an iPod before, but blimey, I'm getting old. It's not that old, it's only about 10 or 11 years old or something, isn't it, the iPod? But yeah, it stored 1,000 songs, a gigabyte. It stored 1,000, you know, lots and lots of songs with storage. Or actually, what it does is it's 1,000 songs in your pocket. It was all that. It was that thing about being able to be anywhere and play your music, and being able to articulate what your business does in terms of how it impacts on your customers is the bit that you want to try and do in your presentation. Because I think if you can articulate that, you truly are cracking this thing about setting out the need, the market, the opportunity, and how our business is going to go about doing it, and what a difference it makes to our customers. Let me give you an example. So again, this was a presentation I saw just a couple of months ago business that, quite a technical business actually. It's not only that it makes diamonds using a unique high pressure process that mimics the natural pressures applied over thousands of years, and they do it in a way that reduces the power requirements to do that, significantly reducing the cost. But looked at another way, it's the same statement, but what it means is that we've got a competitive cost advantage. So that's our real point of difference. Making industrial diamonds, which are widely used in massive markets worth billions of dollars around the world, but they cost a certain price to make. We've created a process that gives us a real competitive advantage in our market because of that cost advantage. And what that means is that we can share that cost with our industrial customer base. And this was a real example actually. And what it means is that they're confident that they can win more business once they've actually they had to prove that their process worked. To be fair, there was another step in this, but and what that means for you as investors is that actually we think we've got an idea when we make it happen that can create a real potential future value. So it's what it does and what it is and what it will do for either our competitive situation in our market or for our customers or potentially them as investors. So think about how you position the difference between those two things, because it's really, really important that you're able to do both if you can. Right, so what would a typical 10-minute presentation look like? Let me just run through just as a sort of a flow. So positive opening headline statement, as I said, using the 3 elements that I talked about earlier on. You might want to say whether you've got, if it's an angel, they're very interested in whether you're EIS or SEIS eligible. It's basically the best tax advantage that you can offer to an investor to reduce the risk of their investment in your company. It's a really, really big tax advantage. If you don't know what it is or you don't know how it works, grab hold of your accountant and get them to tell you all about it, because it's, from an angel investment perspective, it's probably really, really important that you've got it. Tell the story. I think I used the word story earlier on. You are telling a story. So begin by talking about the problem that you're trying to solve in your marketplace to engage the audience. Talk about your solution. So you're explaining you and your USP and how it solves the problem. As I said, keep it short and concise. Don't go down too many tracks. Target market. Who's it for? What's your plan? How are you going to go and get it? What's your marketing? How will you reach your customers? Who's going to do it? How are you going to do it? Angel investors are obviously quite hot on this stuff, because one thing saying we have an opportunity, it's another thing saying how we're going to go and get it. So you need to have thought that through and be able to present that. You've got to be able to talk about your financials. So you, it says there 1, 3, 5 years forecasts are realistic. I think this is a little bit about knowing your audience a little bit, which might be a difficult thing to do. I think I would take a middle line. I think if you can be sharing, where you think you're going to be in 3 years' time, and you've got some forecasts behind it, that would be. I think that would be a good thing to be able to share. Make sure they're realistic. Make sure you try not to fall into the trap that lots fall into of the hockey stick, where it's relatively flat growth, and then in the last year we get this massive uptick. Got to try and show progress across the plan if you can. I know it's not always like that. But make sure that you know your numbers and you present your financials, the key numbers. Make sure you talk about your competitors, as I said earlier on. Talk about your management, who you are, who your management team might be. Are there any external people that you've got involved that help give you credibility? I've seen some excellent presentations that are made really, really credible by getting a well-known or very experienced non-executive director involved. Just does add an awful lot of credibility when you can get good people on board. Convey how much you're looking for. Talk about how you're going to use it. Talk about investment in terms of the percentages, the existing structure. You might already have a shareholder structure. It might be important to share that if you think it's relevant to the angel investor at this point in time. Talk about exit, and then invite Q&As. Q&As, some people prefer to leave questions to the end. Some people are happy to take questions as you go. I think that's down to you and your style and your preference. Other considerations: how long have you got? Where are you doing it? As we obviously at the minute it's just Zoom. Make sure that it works if it's Zoom. Unlike the way I did earlier, I had a problem right at the very start of this, which is why it looks like I'm not looking at you all. I've got two screens and it didn't work properly. So make sure you've done that. Take on board my own learnings there. So who's the audience? How are you going to do it? Make sure you've got all the right equipment. Yeah, if you can find out who they are, find out something about them. Find out something about their background, find out something about how they've succeeded. It will help it will definitely help you tailor what you say or what you decide to highlight in your presentation. Clothing, formal, informal. Don't know on that one. I'm sort of, yeah, I've become very I don't know, the whole working from home thing has, look at me today. I've got a hoodie. It's terrible, actually. It's become, I think it has become much less formal, hasn't it? Dress. I think it's just important to think about being dressed appropriately, and actually, obviously, to feel comfortable too helps with your confidence. Joanne's point, right? Who's doing it? Who's handling the questions? Who's saying what? Who shouldn't answer a particular question if it comes about? Make sure you've just agreed all of that. You know, rehearsal and practice is so important. If there's any samples, if it's a product-based pitch, then can you send them before? You might be able to hand them out. If it's a face-to-face, you might be able to hand them out during the session. I know that the business I'm a shareholder in, we're a product that they're fantastic to eat. So obviously, we always make a point of trying to share product if we can in any of our presentations. Right. Know your investors. What are they looking for? So they'll be looking at you and saying, can you sell? Can you sell your business? Can you, or if you can't, who's the person that's actually growing this business by selling and marketing themselves? Are you credible? Certainty and dependability. Do I trust the forecasts? How optimistic are they? Look, a forecast is a forecast. You might argue that there's no such thing as an accurate forecast because they're always wrong in some way. But I think it's important to be able to justify them and make sure that they're credible. See far too many forecasts that are just ridiculously optimistic that, quite honestly, the business has got no chance of achieving. You do your credibility no good if you take that approach. Be open and transparent. So if there's some story about the business in some way, about how it involved, or if there's been a shareholder disagreement or something like that, then you know what? Might not be a bad idea to talk about it. Because if they find out later, they'll ask themselves the question, why didn't you tell me? Were you trying to hide something? How long will it take? So is it really is this thing gonna happen in 3 years, or actually, when I look at this, it's gonna take a lot longer? So, that's certainly something that investors are looking at. Can I work with them? I think I've talked about that. Can I trust them? Is there trust and rapport? How much of my support will they need? Investors get involved because not only for the money, believe it or not, some angel investors, they get involved because they've been there and they've done it, and they like the opportunity to share their experience and their wisdom. So some investors might be looking to give lots of support. That might actually be quite important to them. Other investors might decide it's the opposite of that. I'm quite prepared to make a financial investment and then occasionally get involved. But if I feel that this person needs too much of my time, then perhaps it's not right for me. So again, I get that's about knowing your audience to a certain extent. Will they need more cash later?
Fine.
Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But when it comes to the forecasts, in some ways, it's like talking about features and benefits. We're going to do a 10% increase, and this is how. We're going to do a 50% increase by next year, and this is how.
Yeah.
Rather than just
absolutely, yeah.
numbers of some increases.
Rather than just the numbers. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. Will they need more cash later? I mean, most businesses do. You can easily persuade yourself that you don't. So you might have a business plan that says I need 100 grand and that will get me to Nirvana, that will get me to my £10 million company. The reality is that you probably will need more cash because that's how business goes, and that growth always dictates more investment. So it'll certainly be one of the assessments that the angel will make about, well, I might be putting 50 in today, but hang on a minute, they're probably going to need another couple of hundred in 3 years' time. Is that right for me? And how will that impact on my investment? And trust and rapport, as we talked about earlier on. What do they think? What do they think of you? Is that okay? Can I keep going?
Yeah, Paul. Joanna's raised a hand.
Joanne?
I was going to say, you know, all this presentation, my apps are go fantastic, and you walk out and you think yes, and they go and do due diligence, and it crashes and burns in the first line because you haven't got documentation. You may have, you know, been a family business that's come from nothing, so you don't have contracts of employment, you don't do all the documentation. So really think about that before you even get to this stage. Make sure you've got your preparation there, and it's not just substantiating the model, it's substantiating everything else, the structure, everything else. So just be prepared all round.
No, absolutely. You sound like you're speaking from a little bit of experience, are you, or Joanne?
Yeah, well, I've been on both sides of the you know, the fence quite a few times. So it sometimes you've been caught out yourself. Mostly it's like, really, you know, that's just never going to go anywhere. As soon as a person's walked out the door and you think, you know, I'm not going to invest in that. So it's quite hard, you know, but you know instantly really whether it's a goer or not.
They know, don't they? Well, I think what they're very good at is asking the right questions to find out, aren't they? They're good at that. They'll ask you that question, depending on your answer, they'll make a decision.
But you also may have a choice of 2 or 3, and you've got to make the right choice as well. So, you know, perhaps don't accept the first offer. It might not be the right one. And, you know, just really make sure you do your due diligence on them. So,
You're dead right. You've got to make sure that the people, because you are going to spend time with them. You're going to have to, you know, if they're giving you some money, they're going to want to know certain things, aren't they? As the plan has been delivered. So you've got to be able to work with them as well.
You're technically getting married, aren't you, to these people? You know, you've got to have a relationship with them. You've got to, you know, everything, and they're going to be in your business, in the board meetings, reading the minutes. You know, it is like, do I want to be married to these other people, you know, for the rest of their business life, or to when the exit is, or to when you can cash them out? So if you don't like them, then, you know, you've got to be brave as well.
Yeah, and you can get complexity like, so we're pitching for some investment, which is maybe a second or a third round. We've already got some investors who don't want to put any more money in because that's their situation. Can they work with the new investors?
Yeah,
it's all that complexity. So they get the complexity of making sure the board will work. Yeah, you're right. Okay. So it's just a few things about what investors say, and we might question during your pitch. So clear slides, less is often more. Try to resist the temptation to put too much information in your presentation and in your slides. Think about the key points. Think about your audience. Time is precious. Please don't waste it. They see lots of businesses, lots of pitches. So, you know, don't waste people's time. As I said, you need EIS and SEIS. Probably, if you've not got that, you know, most investors won't invest. Make sure you're able to articulate your points of difference. Make sure you can talk about your financials, talk about your track record, be realistic with your deal offer and realistic valuation. You know, we've all seen Dragon's Den, but I think Dragon's Den in many ways does the whole pitching investing thing a bit of a disservice, because I think it's just really, I don't watch it anymore. I think it's terribly unrealistic. But the element of businesses making incredibly high valuations and incredibly big asks for a tiny share in their business, that's real. So, you know, make sure you've really clearly thought that through. Get some advice on it. You know, how have you valued? How have you put the value on your business? What metric have you used? Make sure you're able to articulate and justify the value you're putting on your business. I mean, talking to your accountant or an advisor or a business coach, but make sure you do that. It's really, really important, because they're going to be saying, "What's my return? Is the forecast realistic, probable, possible?" And as I said earlier on, when's it really going to be delivered? Is it really going to get delivered in 3 years? Is it a business idea with growth potential? Lots of angels are looking for things that are scalable, you know, that have got a decent target market and have got the opportunity to just get bigger. That's often what they're looking for. And make sure there's a clear exit strategy. What would be the way that they can get their money out? And by the way, not just for the founders. They want to make sure that their money is not just going to you to finance, I don't know, an expensive living that you might have. So it's important that you've thought that through too. So do's, let me see, make sure there's none of these that are duplicated, clear and concise. I think what I might do with these next few slides is that you can read these. So rather than me go slavishly through these, unless there's any key points I want to pull out. Interesting point at the end, make notes of questions asked and the feedback you were given. Take it as a learning opportunity. You'll hear lots of entrepreneurs talk about the fact that it took them 30 meetings or 100 meetings with lots of different people before they got their investment, right? And don't give up, but learn. Take everyone as a learning opportunity and get better at it as you go. Don'ts, I think I've said most of these. Waffle or guess. If you don't know something, admit it and say you'll find out. I think I might have made that point earlier on. Be yourself. Be yourself. Yeah. Please don't misunderstand what I said earlier on about tone and positive impact, and because we're not all like that. I completely get that, but do think about. So be yourself is really, really important, but do think about how you project yourself. Get some feedback, by the way. Present it to somebody else and get some feedback before you go step in front of an investor, and get somebody who you trust to give you the feedback, whose opinion you trust, and also listen to what they say. Don't get defensive about it. Take it as also part of the learning opportunity. I think I did say this earlier on. So objections and tough questions, it doesn't mean if you get lots of tough questions, that's often a good sign, because it means that they're taking the time and the effort to push you a little bit with some good questions. It's a good thing. But make sure you've thought about what they might be, so to give yourself confidence. So write them down. Write the top 25 objections that you might get in your market, and write down the answers to each of them. Think about, where's my plan weakest? Where am I weak? Is it in my sales and marketing? Is it in the financials? Why does the year 3, why do the sales trail in year 3? Why does it take 3 years to get there? Why are my margins down for a couple of years and then they grow all of a sudden? Really where's the plan? Test the plan yourself. Where's it at its weakest? And be prepared to explain why, because you'll likely get a question like, because angels are often good at spotting those things. Right, and I think I did say this. Most common need from investors that they like to invest in a business where they can add real value and make a difference. So private investors particularly. I'm not sure this applies to venture capitalists, by the way. You know, if you're talking about that sort of investment, their criteria, without a shadow of a doubt, is return on their investment. How many times can I turn it and how quickly? But if you're getting an individual, you know, then this definitely does apply. And I think if you can tap into this, if you can know this and tap into it, it will help you sell your business, sell your idea, help you get that investment potential. Right. I don't know how I've done for time. It's 5:15. How was that?
Very good, thank you.
I feel like I've talked a hell of a lot. I'm sorry I've talked at you. That's one of the downside of this damn Zoom situation. Anybody got any thoughts or questions? Ian and Tony, what do you any points you'd like to make?
Yeah, I'll raise a question with you, Paul. So
yeah,
the valuation and share equity conversation is a difficult one to get right, I guess. But how do you deal with the second or third round of investment when you've already given so much shares away? I'm working with a tech company at the minute, and he's finished up with about 8 different shareholders, and it's very difficult to see how he's going to move forward because he's got all these minority shareholders in the company.
Well, go to a bank. The first thing I'd suggest, if you can, because there's no shares when you get a bank loan.
Well, it's very early stage, but I mean,
right.
it's what I'm saying is it's a potential problem, isn't it? You get in an early stage business, you take some equity on, and then you need to do a second round.
You've got to come back.
And how does that work generally?
Yeah, well, it's difficult, Tony. I don't think there's a set formula to it. I mean, the advice we would always give to businesses is make sure that you've got somebody holding your hand and helping you through the process, because it's challenging, you know, particularly when you come up against experienced investors. It's a really difficult balance to get right, isn't it? You know, get that first investment. How much, you know, if you give half of your business, you're not giving it. If you sell half of your business, as you rightly point out, it makes it harder at second and third round. I don't think there's an easy answer to the question other than make sure you've got some good advice. You know, you've got to be able to, the harder you're able to demonstrate a good multiple going forward, then obviously the higher value you can put on your business, the lower level of shares you can expect to have to sell in rounds 2 or 3. So a big part of it is being able to justify a stronger valuation. So that therefore is all about the numbers. So what do the numbers really say? You know, are they detailed? Are they well thought through? We spend a lot of time in Garbutt and Elliott working with businesses, getting their forecasts right, forecasting their P&L and their cash flow and impact it's going to have on their balance sheet for 3 and 5 years. So making sure you've got a real handle on those numbers can help. But you know as well as I do, business valuation is part science and part art. You know, there's no set formula to it.
An early stage, very difficult to put a value on. So
it is. It's really, really hard. If I talk about Yorkshire Pudding Pie, actually, if I give you a real life example, so that was a startup business created by a husband and wife. Great product idea, but they didn't have the money to invest in it, so they came and got investors, and there were 3 of us have put money in, and they've had to let a decent chunk go because while it was a fantastic idea, it didn't have a track record. So they've got exactly the problem that you're describing, actually, exactly the same problem. So what you got to do is you got to get as much success under your belt as possible, because it's track record drives valuation, doesn't it? You know. Yeah. Good question. Tough question. That was a bloody tough question.
I'd also think, Paul, it's Joanne again. that, you know, sometimes you have to consolidate and take those strips of investors out. And some of them are happy to go out, you know, because they've done their bit. They don't want to go. They don't want to be diluted. You know, there's all of that, you know, discussion to go on. So sometimes it's worth, you know, going in the second and third round and say, I want to consolidate. And, you know, there may be a premium to take that strip out. But, you know, it's a conversation you have to have. And quite often I've found that that's been a successful way of doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And I was just thinking about banks, actually, Tony, to your question. There are challenger banks. I mean, and track record is obviously much more important with banks because they want to see your they want to know that you can repay the loan, don't they? That's their need. So you've got to be able to demonstrate history. But the more you move away from the mainstream banks and into the challenger banks, the greater chance you've got of achieving an investment. And in actual fact, again, coming back to my experience with Yorkshire Pudding Pie, that's exactly what we've done. We didn't have a particularly brilliant track record. We were doing all right. So the business is only a couple of years old. And last year, obviously, lockdown hit and we went online. But we've been able to achieve a second round of investment, 150 grand investment we got through BEF, one of the challenger banks. Now it's Northern Powerhouse funded. They've got a slightly different set of criteria. They still want to know that you're going to be able to repay it, but they're able to take, you know, they've got a willingness to take a bit more of a risk. You pay a higher interest rate for it, unfortunately. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
A couple of things from an IoD perspective. If anybody's a member or an associate member of the IoD, there are some really helpful fact sheets. I know there's a very good one about business plans, and there's another one about valuing how to value your business. So those of you who are members, don't forget that you can download these. They're 4 or 5 pages usually, and they give you a real introduction to whether it's developing a business case, whether it's putting a valuation on your business. So at least you've got some ideas before you go maybe to a professional advisor like Garber & Elliott, who will take you through and do it properly with you. But it's quite useful to have a bit of a guidance there, so you know which questions to ask and what things to challenge.
Can I just add to that, Ian, as well, that I should have mentioned right at the start. If you've not seen the investment readiness program, just do a quick Google on investment readiness, which is a program that's been sponsored by the Leeds City region. It's a fantastic program for early stage businesses and established businesses, but though, you know, those that are looking to go to the next step in their evolution to get investment or whatever it might be. There's a lot of support, part of which is delivered by ourselves at Garber & Elliott around the financial sides of investment. So there's a session, for instance, called What's Your Business Worth, which tries to put a little bit more meat on the answer to Tony's question, which is looking at how multiples work and how angels and venture capitalists do put a value on businesses. So that's a really, really interesting session. But there's a whole plethora of other support, which in effect is really free consultancy around HR, legal, branding, marketing, leadership, in a team. It's a really, really, really good program. So if you take 2 minutes on Google and find it, have a look. I'd love to see some of you on the program again at some point in the future.
Bea has just advised that she'll circulate the details of the investment readiness program.
Oh, thank you, Bea.
In the follow-up email, and Helen, I think, will be doing that.
Thank you.
The question from Stephen Liu: is a 23-page business plan in PowerPoint too much?
A business plan or a presentation? Well,
it says a 23-page business plan. If,
business plan.
If Stephen can come.
I think it's horses for courses. You know, if it's appropriate for you and your situation, your business, to do a business plan on 2 pieces of paper, fantastic, as long as it does the job. Sometimes you've got to go into a lot more detail. It depends on, I know it's not a particularly brilliant answer to the question, but I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all. I think when you're making a presentation, you know, realistically 10 or 12 slides, something like that, not 23, not 33. But with the business plan itself, sometimes you do have to go into quite a bit of detail. Depends on what your business does, depends on your situation, depends how much money you're asking for, depends whether it's a bank or an angel you're asking the money from. As I say, it's horses for courses. So I know that's not a brilliant answer, Stephen, but that's how I would see that. And we see that, you know, in the help that we give businesses writing their business plans. Clearly, there's some key elements that have got all of them. You know, there's some bits that have got to be in. Yeah.
I think sometimes it's worth writing something and then going back and going over it 4 or 5 times and making sure that every word earns its place in the document. If you start to waffle, if you're using 6 words and you can distill it down to 2 words, do so.
Do it.
And you do find that, you know, first time you read it, you write it rather, and then you go back through it and you think, oh, I've repeated myself here, I've duplicated there, I could do that in a shorter version, I could take that out and put it in an appendix, and all those sorts of things. So it is work it over and over a few times before you go public with it.